Need to wash off my hands cause they're full of bacon grease. Hands and bacon grease. Hands and bacon grease. Gotta wash off my hands cause they're bacon grease full and never gonna be clean. Hello everyone, my name's Stonsey Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we are reading pages 72 to 100. Oh my gosh, that's 28 pages. Gonna be a long video, but we're also starting a new section in the dog reading category, so yep, that's gonna be also pretty dang long. Oy vey, we are just not escaping this, are we? Well, I guess the best way to get through this is starting, so without further ado, let's begin. Pressure. Luca jolted and stuttered stepped forward. He threw out a hand and braced himself for a shove against the nearest wall. He ground his teeth and turned to glare at his friend. Cut it out, Nolan. And Nolan laughed and jumped on Luca, wrapping Luca in a playful headlock, dragging him to the red carpeted floor. Luca easily flipped Nolan off and bounced back on his feet. What's up with you today, dude? Luca asked, a muscular, shaggy blonde who kept trying to roughhouse with Luca like they were little kids and high school seniors. You drink too much coffee this morning. No such thing. Nolan grinned up at Luca and extended a hand. Luca shook his head and took a hand. He pulled Nolan upright. Nolan grinned even wider and pulled Luca into a half hug. Luca gave into the hug, but he wanted to shove a big oaf away. Friend is a word that was sure to be applied to Nolan anymore. Yeah, he and Nolan and Asher had been hanging out together for a long time, but lately Luca wasn't sure they spent time two so-called buddies. Well, actually, Asher wasn't the problem, it was Nolan. Ever since Nolan started dating Maddie, he'd been acting like they were a royal couple. Since it hadn't been so hard with Maddie, Luca's longtime friend had been crowned homecoming queen this year. Now Luca felt increasingly like he and Asher were the king and queen subjects, and he didn't like that feeling. Should I be jealous? Maddie asked, positively putting her arm around Nolan's waist. He winked at and giggled her eyebrows at him. Winked at Luca and wiggled her eyebrows at him. He sighed and turned away when Nolan leaned down and kissed his dark and distractingly pretty girlfriend. Luca tried to ignore the pressure in his chest. Maddie's jealousy was pretend, Luca's wasn't. Luca had been in love with Maddie long before Nolan had made his move with her, and Nolan had known how Luca felt. You snooze, you lose, Nolan had said when Luca had suggested taking out the girl your friend was crazy. He wasn't particularly cool. Come on, you guys, Asher said. Stop messing around. Check out all the costumes. Let's pick a scenario so we can decide who we want to be. Luca pulled his gaze away and still smooching couple. He turned to Asher, who stood with his arms crossed. He tapped his foot in dramatic impatience. Luca suppressed a smile. Asher, 6 feet 2 inches tall and weary, had gotten into theater and started in his senior year. With thick brown hair and deep brown eyes, Asher was good-looking enough to be a leading man. He immediately landed choice roles and auditioned. He had gotten into a theater that he had announced he would no longer want to go to law school and follow his attorney's father's footsteps. He had previously been in the goal for long. As Luca had known him, they had been a little. Asher had always wanted to play courtroom. Maddie, of course, had always been the judge. Asher was the defense attorney, because that's what his dad was, and Luca played the opposing lawyer. They argued negligence cases. Asher might have not known what the word meant, but he loved it because his dad used it all the time. Luca could still remember some of the trials, the case where he spilled grape juice, the case where he overturned wagon resulting in a skinned knee, the case of a stolen toy train. Luca had always lost these cases. Maddie thought Asher would win because Asher was the one who wanted to be a lawyer, and Luca was just playing along to be nice. But Asher didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. I'm going to be an actor, Asher had proclaimed a week before. Nolan had laughed at Asher's ambition. You and everyone else who gets a part in the school play, Nolan had teased. Luca had been made fun of Asher's grand goal. Luca owned ambitions were pretty lofty, too. He had already received an athletic scholarship at a good university. He planned to pay Paul for 4 years and study phys ed. He was going to do well in college and then pursue a master's degree in sports science. Then he was going to work his way into university football coaching position. Ultimately, he wanted to coach in the NFL. Luca was a good wide receiver. He was great at fast and agile. He wasn't, however, big or strong. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall and lanky. He knew that sometimes these guys his size made it in the pros, but Luca wasn't aggressive enough or confident enough to be one of them. He didn't, however, think that the smarts of the coach of a level. Besides, because he figured every dream would have support behind it, Luca wanted to encourage Asher's new inspiration. Go for it, Ash, he told his friend. The only problem with Asher's new passion was that his theatrics had started bleeding into the rest of his life. Luca had noticed Asher's gesture and facial expression were becoming more and more exaggerated. Now, for example, Asher rolled his eyes and oblivious, still kissing Nolan and Maddie, and looking to the ceiling as if seeking divine intervention to part the two lovebirds. He sighed loudly and wandered away. Luca reminded where he was, but ignored the couple. He turned his eyes to several rows of animal costume suits and plainclothes costumes. He had to admit it was impressed by all the choices. When Nolan shoved Luca, they'd been entered a costume closet. The first stop was in Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex roleplay venue. Urban Legend Roleplayers Auditorium, a huge room, which looked like an obsessive crazy rich person's mega closet, was filled with hanging rods, shelves, and cubby holes. All these were stuffed with animal suits and heads, clothes and shoes, and other accessories. Everything was neatly organized and color-coded. According to Asher, who had read up on the game before they arrived to play it, the color codes were associated with the various roleplay scenarios offered to the auditorium. Once you choose what story you wanted to play out, you pick the costumes accordingly. As Luca had looked around, several kids and teens darted through the rows in costumes. They chattered excitedly as they examined their choices. Luca spotted his first few classmates checking out the Golden Freddy costume, and he smiled at the group of little girls arguing over who could wear the Chica costume. Chica, the yellow chick, holding an animated cupcake, appeared to be all three girls' favorite Freddy character. Beyond the girls, a wall-to-wall mirror reflected the costumes of excited, soon-to-be role-players. Luca caught the glimpse of himself and his friends in the glass. He cringed. Not for the first time, he noticed the contrast between them. Luca felt like he was the smallest out of the guys he knew. He might be a football player, but he didn't have the ripped muscles his friend had. He was also behind them in the facial hair department. Nolan and Asher, and most of the guys in their department on the team, had been shaving for a while. Luca had barely enough fuzz on his chin to wave a razor at every week or so. On top of all that, thanks to Luca's perpetually tousled auburn hair, he had a cowlick that made neat styles impossible. He thought that he looked like more of a 13-year-old than a soon-to-be college freshman. And once football season was over, he no longer had helmet hair as an excuse. Luca shifted his attention back to the costumes. He eyed the security guard uniform, even though security guards didn't generally fare well in spare entertainment games. Luca wanted to be the guard. He liked the idea of being the hero. Luca and his friends had been walking to try out the roleplay auditorium ever since the Pizzaplex had opened. The VR venue in the Pizzaplex was great, but being on a real set sounded way more fun. Luca was a fan of horror movies and thought going to act in a scary story would be a blast. His group of friends, especially their burgeoning star, Asher, agreed. Between classes and football practice, today's venture had been hard to schedule, so Luca was eager to Asher to get started, even if he had to put up with Nolan and Maddie's show. The Urban Legend Roleplayers Auditorium was set up with the reenacting many of the rumors and ghost stories that had come associated with the Fazbear Entertainment brand over the years. Luca thought the auditorium was a great marketing ploy. He was pretty sure the stories were more fact than myth or rumor. He'd read about the kids who disappeared, and he had no problem imagining their corpses stuffed away in the old Freddy's location. The ghosts finding a way to haunt the animatronics that are supposedly still in the abandoned restaurant. If Fazbear Entertainment couldn't shake the rumors, why not lean into them, make some money off of the believers? Believers like him, he had to admit. Asher waved to get Luca's attention. He pointed at the menu board of stories on the wall near the closet's entrance. Look at this one, Asher said. It's called Green-Eared Killer. It's about 3 teens have broken the Fazbear Frights haunted house, and it was stalked by Springtrap. They have to try to get away from him before he kills them. That sounds way cool. Maddie and Nolan finally came up for air. Maddie sauntered over to join Asher. The menu board looked like a scoreboard with a list of valuable roleplay games. A slate square that is next to each game name. The blank square meant the game was open for players. When you picked the game, you initialed the square to indicate the game had been taken. I thought we were going to act out the actual haunting, Luca said. You wanted to act out the haunting, Maddie said. That's because you're obsessed with murderous animatronics. She flipped her long, wavy black hair over her bare shoulder. And murderous animatronics are just stupid. Luca forced himself to ignore the way Maddie's attention, good or bad, made him feel. She's taken, he told himself for the 1,000th time, by your friend. Get over it. They aren't stupid. Where do you think Fazbear Entertainment got the ideas for all their games? You want to think they just plucked the notion from dangerous animatronics out of the clear blue sky? You think it's a coincidence that nearly all their game scenarios have to do with security guards or trespassers trying to avoid being killed? Look at that, Luca pointed at the menu board. Most of the stories have to do with trying to survive a night in the security office. Trying to stay alive while patrolling the old restaurant and trying to keep the music box going so the ghost doesn't get you. Luca got himself getting worked up. He was sick of me to defend his interests. It's genius, actually. Fazbear Entertainment is trying to make the light of all stories. And why is that? Because there's truth in them. They keep coming up with games that have crawling through vents and slamming doors and hiding inside costumes because they know that there's animatronics out of control and killed people. It's all true. Nolan stared at Luca with raised eyebrows. Dude, you should find, like, Grayson from algebra. You say the word cabal or you pull a tinfoil hat out of your pocket, I might puke. Luca rolled his eyes. Grayson was a geek who talked way too much in class and was always trying to evil corporate conspiracy and extraterrestrial mind control. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying that creating games in light of bad reputation is a great way of downplaying the lies. Luca made air quote. being told about the company. Much ado about nothing, Asher said. Exactly, Luca nodded. Well, yeah, well, whatever, Maddie said. I want to be a damsel in distress. Let's play a green-eared killer. I'll be the one of the teens. She walked up and put her initials in chalk next to the game on the menu board. The costume code is dark green. She linked a hand around Nolan's arm. Come on, stud boy, let's go pick our costumes. Nolan grinned at the nickname Maddie had recently started using for him. He affected the cocky swagger as the couple headed down the row of costumes. Asher and Luca exchanged a going-to-gag look and followed Maddie and Nolan obediently. But Luca wasn't happy about it. Luca had known Asher and Maddie were for most of his life. They'd lived in the same neighborhood. They'd played together as kids and hung out together in grade school and middle school. During that time, Luca had never thought about Maddie as anything but a friend. Always scruffy with the wild hair and buck teeth. Maddie had been a tomboy, and she was just a pal, nothing more. Then they got into high school, though. Maddie, who was strong and athletic, had tried to try out for cheerleading. She wasn't conventionally pretty as the other girls then, but her gymnastic ability landed her a spot on the squad. Soon after that, she got braces and buck teeth turned into a perfect smile. He named her hair and started using makeup, and tomboy vibes disappeared, replaced by gorgeous teenager in no time. Maddie was the head cheerleader and this year, and she'd become homecoming queen and class president. And Luca was in love. He just never bothered to tell Maddie. Nolan transferred into their school toward the end of sophomore year, and he joined the junior varsity football team. Asher was the team's quarterback, and Luca was the star wide receiver. Nolan was on defense usually, but he was cornerback. One day after tackling Luca in practice, he'd made a reference to a horror movie Luca liked. After practice, they'd meet up and Asher and started talking movies. It was just part of him talking to part of the group. And recently, Luca realized that though he and Asher still shared interests besides movies and football, wrestling and baseball and tennis and golf and fishing and camping, scary movies and football were about the only things Nolan had in common with either of them. Nolan, a cut up who never took life seriously, had always been cocky, but he seemed to be growing more arrogant every day. Luca was getting tired of it. And then there was a whole "you stole my soulmate" thing. Luca had convinced that Maddie was the love of his life. He'd just been too dense to know it, and before she turned into a beauty queen. Hey, here they are, Maddie said now, and she waved a hand toward the row of costumes tagged with green plastic discs. Asher rushed forward and grabbed a pair of khaki pants and short-sleeved button-down shirt and a plastic pocket pen holder. I'll be the nerdy kid, he announced. I'll have to work hard to embody the role, but I can do it. Luca snorted. Maddie pulled out a short cotton floral dress. The dress fabric was yellow and pink. Its hem was frilly. Oh, this is perfect distressed damsel dress. She held it up in front of her. The dress was too girly to suit Luca's taste. However, she was sure Maddie would look good in it, but Maddie would look good in a paper bag. Nolan reached out and snagged a pair of faded jeans and black t-shirt. I'll be the cool dude, he said. Luca pulled the gaze from Maddie. He raised an eyebrow at a clothes Nolan held. How are those any different than what you normally wear? He looked pointedly at Nolan's jeans and dark gray t-shirt. Nolan looked down in mock indigestion and said, these jeans aren't that faded. He grinned at Luca. Besides, if there are any fake blood involved in all this, I don't want to ruin my favorite duds. Luca shook his head. He scanned the row of costumes and turned to the other side of the row and reached for the security guard costume. You can't wear that, Maddie said. She stepped up beside him and put a hand on his arm. Her fingers were warm on his skin. He quickly jerked them back. Why not? Maddie pointed at the red desk. That's not for the green-haired killer scenario. Yeah, Asher said. Besides, we need a killer. And of all teams, he motioned the clothes the others had picked out. You have to be Springtrap. The killer? Luca shook his head. No way, I'm not going to be the killer. Luca's friends lined up together and looked at him. You got no choice, dude, Nolan said. Yeah, Asher agreed. The scenario is called Green-Eared Killer. Has to be a green-eared killer. That's Springtrap. It's the only choice left. So that's you. Luca shook his head harder. That's not me, and if that's the only choice, we're going to have to play a different game. Says who? Nolan asked. You're not the boss here. And you are? Luca shot back at Nolan. Nolan puffed up his already massive chest. He closed the distance between him and Luca. Maddie squeezed behind them. Cut it, you two. You're not going to fight over a role-playing game. She gave them both scathing looks. And besides, everyone knows I'm the boss here. Luca actually couldn't argue with that, but he could work with it. He stepped back. Locking in on his gray eyes, a girl once called him Platinum Magic. He hadn't asked for a second date. On Maddie's deep green ones, she said, let's play a different game, Mads. Maddie twisted a corner of her mouth. Then, she smiled at him. She turned to Asher. You want to take mercy on him and play something else? Asher shook his head, flicking the glance at Luca. He said, sorry, Luca. We already officially picked it. And besides, he turned and looked at the menu board. The other games have been taken. Luca followed Asher's gaze. Asher was right. In a few minutes, he and his friends had been looking at the costumes. And empty squares that filled next to all the other games had been filled. Luca turned to Nolan. You be Stringstrap. Nolan raised an eyebrow. Why me? Why do I look like a killer? Asher made a show of looking up Nolan up and down. Actually, with that crazy hair, yeah, you kind of do. You got killer looks, Maddie told Nolan. He squeezed his prominent bicep. Luca had been look away and pressed his lips together. He didn't trust himself to speak. Nolan leaned toward the row of costumes. He plucked a ratty-looking puke yellow-green rabbit suit off of the rack. Holding it in front of him, he wrinkled his nose. Wow, this thing is realistic. It's not only gross-looking, it stinks. He thrust toward Luca. Luca backed away. I'm not wearing that thing. You are if you're going to play this game, Asher said. Luca took a look at Asher. Why don't you be Stringtrap? Asher affected it, and I'm as cute as a bunny look. I'm way too good looking to be stuck inside a rabbit suit. Luca snorted. Asher grinned and then he shrugged. Seriously, I picked the costume first. You could have picked, but you didn't. Luca thought Asher sounded like a 5-year-old, but he didn't say so. He looked back at Nolan. What's your excuse? You're a sick dude. You usually root for the killers in horror movies. Why not play one? Nolan grinned. I don't have to kill my girlfriend. Lucas noted. It's roleplay. And you think even in roleplay stalking my girl is going to get me any more kisses today? Nolan asked, winking at Maddie. Maddie bumped shoulders with Nolan. He returned his wink, then bunched her brows and hugged herself. I wouldn't want to weird me out to kiss a guy who'd kill me, even if it's pretend. And you think I want to kill you? Lucas said. You did when I stole your bike in 2nd grade and crashed into Mr. Wainberg's Rosa arbor. Maddie grinned. Remember how pissed he was? For a second, Luca forgot about Springtraps and smiled at the memory of Maddie using a stolen bike to try to catapult over her neighbor's big cement cherub fountain. She slipped the cherub's wing and ended up launching herself into the arbor. And on impact, she bent the wheels of Luca's bike and made a mess of Mr. Wainberg's prized climbing roses. Luca crossed his arms. I remember how pissed I was. Exactly my point, Maddie said. Channel that feeling. She grabbed the suit and held it to Luca. Put on the freaking suit. Luca winced as he stared at the suit's matted greenish fur. The costume really was an abomination. Luca knew it was supposed to be a rabbit suit, but it wasn't representative of any rabbit you want to pick him and cuddle. Like all the Fazbear Entertainment animal characters, this rabbit is caricature of the ordinary rabbit, like an animal created at Evil Science's lab. With torn ears and patches of yellow and green fur ripped away as the suit's structure was exposed in several places. It took old and rusty, or was it that rust? The reddish splotches could have been something else. After that, the Springtrap suit would have been worn by a killer. At least, that was the story. You afraid that you're going to get cooties? Nolan mocked in a sing-song voice. Luca didn't bother responding. Cooties weren't his problem. No, he didn't relish the idea of getting inside a stinky, rotten-looking costume. The idea of putting this metal lining against his skin made him willies. He would have feel himself regressing into 17 years old to 7. That, however, wasn't why he abhorred the idea of putting on the suit. His problem was being Springtrap couldn't lie about the costume. His problem was who Springtrap was. According to Fazbear lore, Springtrap was the alter ego and evil person of William Afton, the man who had kidnapped and killed the little kids at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. The real Afton had apparently gotten trapped in the rabbit suit and eventually died, sort of, inside of it. In the most nightmarish rumors associated with Freddy's, Afton's corpse had come back to life somehow. In doing so, he turned to Springtrap. Fazbear Entertainment made light of this fable, as they called it. This is why they made the character part of the game. As Luca gazed at the suit now, he was pretty sure he was right in thinking that the fables weren't exactly fables. He had no trouble imagining his suit animated by a real killer. Maddie lost her patience and shoved Springtrap's suit against Luca's chest. Take it, she commanded. She pointed at the end of the row. Costumes were neon dressing room style, glowed red above a small arched doorway. Go put it on. Without understanding why, Luca grasped the suit when Maddie let go of it, but he almost immediately dropped it. The suit's fur felt crusty. It was scrummy, too, like it was covered in some kind of invisible slime. Luca managed to hang on to the suit, but that didn't mean it was going to put it on. He looked at his friends. Why don't we all play teens, and we all just pretend Springtrap is after us? Oh, give me a break, Asher heaved a big sigh. What would be the point of that? He stepped forward and poked Luca in the chest. I thought you wanted to do this. You were into it when we first talked about it. What's wrong with you? Luca just frowned at Asher. Nothing's wrong with me. I just don't want to pretend to be a creepy murderer, that's all. I wanted to do a security guard. Luca cringed inwardly. He hoped his friends had heard the whine of once in his voice. He was starting to sound like a 7-year-old. What? Is pretending to be a killer scary? Nolan asked. He emphasized the word scary in a tone that made it clear that he thought Luca was being a coward. Yeah, Asher said. It's too up close and personal for you. Or yeah, Asher said. Is it too up and close and personal for you? Luca made a face. I don't even know what you guys mean. I just don't want to be the killer, okay? You guys are being jerks. They're not being jerks, Maddie growled. You are. You're acting like a baby. You need to get over yourself. Asher stepped up beside Maddie. She's right, Luca. You're being childish. Just a roleplay game, and that, he pointed at the suit, it's just a dirty fake fur and old metal. It's not gonna hurt you. Neither is pretending to be a killer. It's just acting. Luca looked from Asher, Maddie to Nolan. They were standing almost shoulder to shoulder now, and like a phalanx of soldiers commanding them to step in line and follow orders. Why couldn't they just understand how much he didn't want to do this? Why did they just get how wrong it was to pretend to be a murdering maniac? Well, that was the problem. They believed it was just pretend. They were thinking it was had really happened. They weren't thinking about the poor, terrified victims. Luca was thinking about the victims. Not long after Luca and his parents had moved into their neighborhood, about a year before Asher and Maddie's families had moved in, a 4-year-old down the street had disappeared. A little boy named Kenny, and Luca and Kenny's parents were professors at the nearby college, and they're all friends. So Luca had played with Kenny. Kenny had been made like a little puppy, following Luca everywhere. Luca hadn't minded. He was an only child, and he liked playing big brother to Kenny. He taught Kenny all kinds of things: how to build a castle out of blocks, how to race cars off the porch rails, how to catch frogs down by the stream that ran behind their houses. When Kenny had disappeared, Luca had to understand what his parents and Kenny's parents had been talking about when they said he'd been kidnapped. He couldn't figure out why Kenny just wouldn't come back and play. When Kenny's body was found in the same creek Luca and Kenny had played with, Luca's parents had tried to explain to him why bad people sometimes hurt good little kids. For months after Kenny had died, Luca had suffered from a recurring nightmare. Every night, he could hear Kenny scream and cry. He'd like to get Kenny to save him. Every night, he'd been there too late. He watched Kenny die. He still sometimes had that horrible dream. Luca never talked about Kenny. His friends hadn't known. They would relent if he told them now. Nolan suddenly pushed Luca back against the shelving behind him. You know what you are, Luca? Nolan snarled. A coward. Nolan made as if pushed Luca again. Luca backed away and he locked eyes with his friends. Don't push me, Luca said his words evenly and quietly, but apparently no one got the message. He backed off. Basher spoke up. There, see? Just do that, and you'll make a great Springtrap. Luca shook his head. I'm not going to be Springtrap, he said. Hard pass. We need to do something else. All three of Luca's friends gave him a scathing look. Maddie had put her hands on her hips. You're being silly, Luca. You're just being selfish. Come on. We all agreed to do this. Wear the costume, please. For me. Luca took a deep breath and blew it out. He was important in trying to explain himself to his friends. They weren't going to get it, and if he told them about Kenny, well, they'd probably make fun of him for having nightmares for caring so much. Luca looked at the suit he held. He glanced forward to the door and leading out the roleplay auditorium. Beyond the door, his bright lights and happy music and laughter, the rest of the pizza plex reached into a room. He almost felt them call to him, encouraging him to not give in. He could just leave, couldn't he? Yeah, and have it get around the school that the team's star wide receiver was a tantrum over a dumb game. They were only halfway through the year. A ribbing he'd get wouldn't be pretty. Luca looked at Maddie. She gave him a sweeter smile. Luca sighed. Fine, I'll wear the suit. Maddie threw her hands. Well, that was, exhausting. You thought we were asking you to kill the Pope or something. Asher looked ahead at Luca. Drama much? Nolan gave Luca a hard look. Then he pointed to the dressing rooms. Go put it on before you chicken out again. In the dressing room area, Luca stepped inside the cubicle, dragging the rabbit suit behind him like a carcass. He pulled across him, and a small red curtain had draped over the cubicle's opening. The rabbit suit hung in the wooden hanger, which Luca hooked over the short brass rod extending from his yellow wall. He immediately wiped his hands on his jeans and tried to rub away the stink of everything the suit stood for. Luca stared at the decrepit rabbit costume. Was he really going to do this? Luca couldn't hear Nolan and Asher banter next to the couple cubicles as they put on their costumes. Yeah, right, Luca muttered. Costumes. All they had to do was put on different street clothes. We hear you grousing in there, Nolan called out. You better be putting that suit on, and if you're not, I'll come in and do it myself. You and what army? Luca shot back. Nolan and Asher laughed. Yeah, yuck it up, jerks, Luca thought. They weren't the ones having to put on the evil costume. Luca looked at the suit again. Exhaling loudly, he reached for it. Wearing the Springtrap suit was opposed to the other costumes did have one advantage. Whereas Asher and Nolan and Maddie had to shed their clothes and put them in the locker before they got dressed for the game, Luca could put the suit on over his clothes, even over his shoes. Big and baggy, the suit looked like it would fit a guy even bigger than Asher. The disgusting rabbit suit came in two pieces. One piece was a big ghoul-eyed, toothy mouth, broken-eared head. The other piece was the rest of the rabbit's body. His part of the suit was kind of like a hideous onesie for demented adults. The onesie had hidden closures up at the front, so it wasn't hard to get on. All Luca had to do was step into it. Once Luca shoved a tennis shoe-clad feet inside the oversized rabbit feet and stared into a pull of the suit upward, he discovered that it was designed to expand and contract. Both the fur and the metal skeleton beneath the fur stretched and accumulated his height as he brought it up to his legs. Then he got the suit to the waist. He only had to contort the little, shrug one, then the other shoulder into the rabbit torso. His stomach rolling in the reluctance and dread, Luca closed up the suit. He looked at himself in the mirror. From the neck down, Luca no longer Luca. He was a moldering rabbit that looked like an escapee from an apocalyptic track heap. He had the neck up. Luca still looked like Luca. Sort of. Actually, he wasn't quite himself. His skin next to the putrid green fur looked sallow. His forehead was glistening with sweat. His eyes looked strained and a dark circle had appeared under him. Or was that just the dressing room's dim lighting? Behind Luca, a curtain wished open. He swirled around. Hey, Luca objected. Asher and Nolan ignored the protest. They crowded in next to Luca and scared at him. Sweet, Nolan said. Put the head on. I want to see the whole enchilada. Asher brushed against the torn rabbit fur. He quickly recoiled. Ew. See? Luca said. Asher gave Luca a sheepish smile. I mean, yay, you look great. Stuff it, Luca said. Just put the head on, Nolan repeated. Luca felt like automation. He lifted the head and pulled it down over his own. When he inhaled, he nearly retched. It smells like dead fish. His voice sounds funny from the inside of the dead rabbit head. A little muffled and mushy. His vision wasn't quite right, either. He could see, not looking through his milky white eyes of the rabbit head, gave everything a filmy appearance, as if it was all swatched in gauze. Luca didn't like this. He didn't like it at all. Luca started to reach up and take the head off. He changed his mind. He couldn't do this. Before Luca got a grip of the rabbit head, Nola lifted his hands and tugged the head more firmly into place. He reached around in the head and snapped something together. There, he said. You're all set. Luca frowned and used the skeleton-looking rabbit to try to lift off the rabbit head. The head didn't budge. There's a release mechanism in the back, Asher said, craning his neck to examine the suit. But leave it alone. You look great. Yeah, Nolan agreed. Let's do this. Luca rotated to look at himself in the mirror again. He couldn't help himself. He was in full effect. As soon as he saw it, he wished he had it. He'd gone from what he'd already thought was a reasonably okay looking to totally repulsive. Now that Luca had a rabbit head on, he could see how vile it was. With exposed yellowish teeth, and the rabbit's mouth was a grim maw of desolation. A wire snuck out of the rabbit's jaw, and one of the holes in the fur and the rabbit's head exposed and protruding wires. Even more wires extending from beneath the rabbit's dark socket eyes. Luca lifted his head, and once again tried to pull off the rabbit's head. He shifted the attention to the rabbit's paws. Not much paws as his big fuzzy hands. The coverings over Luca's own hands were missing a lot of fur. Several fingers were exposed metal. Luca's knuckles beneath the metal felt entrapped and chafed. Stop that, Asher said. You're not getting out of this. Nolan and Asher grabbed Luca, aka Stringtrap, by the arms and dragged him out of the dressing room. Luca didn't resist. Might as well get it over with, he thought. He agreed to it. He looked like even more of a loser if he backed out now. Outside the dressing room, the neon sign pointed to the hallway and the multiple doors. Each door had another neon sign above it. The signs labeled the sets for each game. Luca, Asher, and Nolan started talking smack about how they're going to win the game. Luca ignored them. His attention had been caught by little girls he'd watched earlier. Little girls were now playing around the outside of the game 4 feet away. And one of the girls was giggling, adjusting her Chica costume head. The other girl was laughing hysterically because her Freddy head kept falling off. The third girl, dressed as Foxy, the fox character with the eye patch and the metal hook, was lunging his way this way and that, waving her plastic hook around. She was oblivious to her friends. She was so oblivious to the Fazbear employee who leaned back against the wall of the costume closet. The employee, a lanky 30-something guy with a super short haircut and large ears, was watching the little girls. The fact that the employee whose name tag, Earl, was watching the little girls wasn't in of itself bad. After all, Luca was watching the little girls too. The difference between Luca's observation and Earl's was that Luca's attention on the girls was benning. He thought the girls' antics were cute. Judging from the expression on Earl's long, narrow face, Earl didn't see cute. His pale blue eyes squinted just slightly, and his mouth stretched in a salacious sneer. Earl's interest in the girls was not Benjamin at all. Earl's was looking at the girls like they were tasty morsels. His focus was so, icky that Luca took a step forward, intending to confront the guy. Before Luca could take a second step, 2 little boys raced in the costume closet, screaming in excitement. Their feet pounded against the floor. Earl shifted his attention to the boys, but his expression didn't change. Luca hesitated, wondering if his confrontation was the right move. Sure, he could easily handle the guy, but the guy would just play dumb, and Luca would look like some type of aggressor. Luca had started scanning the costume closet, trying to find another employee. Maybe he could report what he'd seen. He couldn't find any other employees, but he did spot Maddie. Are you guys ready? Maddie called out as he skipped toward Luca and his friends. Luca turned to Maddie. Luca turned to Maddie. As predicted, Maddie looked amazing in the floral dress. For a second, Luca forgot about Earl. When he remembered, he rotated back to Earl was lurking. Earl was gone. Luca spun in a full circle, searching the area for a skinny guy in a red Fazbear employee shirt. He didn't see Earl anywhere. You coming? Maddie tugged on the arm of Luca's rabbit suit. Luca looked one last time at the unsettling employee. He hesitated. Should I try to find a manager? Maddie tugged again. You're not going out of this. Come on. Luca let Maddie drag him along the hall to where Asher and Nolan were already opening the door in the green-eared killer set. Asher grinned. Let's do this. He and Nolan disappeared through the door. Maddie pulled Luca across the threshold behind him. Each designated area in the roleplay auditorium was a tableau designed to fit a specific game. The green-eared killer staging area was a replica of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, which also included elements of the Fazbear Frights haunted house. From what Luca had read about the urban legend roleplayers auditorium before they got in there, all staging areas were hybrids of multiple locations. Each area was combined venue packed full of themes and old stories. Luca had never been either the original Freddy's or the Fazbear's haunted house, but he played the games. He had an idea of what the pizzeria would look like, and this game set was exactly right. He was blown away by its authenticity. The entrance of the roleplay arena was crumbling brick archway, which the pizza plex was relatively new. The archway Luca was looking at couldn't have been a year old, but it looked to be a long-forgotten entrance to a place better not left remembered. Maddie grabbed Nolan's hand and pulled him through the archway. Look at this, she gushed. It's totally dope. Luca and Asher trailed behind Maddie and Nolan, their feet making tapping and scuffling sounds on the black and white checkered linoleum floor. Luca couldn't see the whole place from where they stood, but he figured there would be a dining area with a stage and backstage area, an arcade, a Pirate's Cove kitchen, an office, a back hallway, storage rooms, party rooms, and a network of large ventilation ducts running through all of it. All these rooms, at least in the games we played, were designed to look old and eerie. They were dimly lit, packing with disturbing Fazbear decor, and populated by knockoffs of the original animatronics. The actual haunted house of the games based on the house were all chock full of jump scares. Luca assumed the set would include them as well, although in the game that they were playing, Springtrap, i.e. Luca, was a real jump scare. So, how does this work? Maddie asked. Asher turned to the circle. He spotted a sign next to the archway, and he stepped over to read it. Luca didn't follow him. He was just trying to convince himself that he was already in a disgusting rabbit suit, getting ready to chase his friends around the pretend haunted house. Why had this seemed like a good idea when they planned it? Okay, Asher said. According to the instructions here, he indicated himself, Maddie and Nolan, are supposed to go down the hallway, he pointed. There's a little room down there that's the backstage area of the game. Once we close the door basically becomes where we're going to break into the haunted house. Even though we're breaking in after dark, the venue's attractions are going to somehow get activated. So it's going to be like a haunted house with a chaser. Springtrap's the chaser. Asher pointed to Luca and gave Luca a thumbs up. Oh, wow. I accidentally read more than I need to, which is kind of funny because I already was stressing about reading too much today. Ooh, doggy. Alright. Well, today we read pages 72 to 100, 28 pages, of Pressure. As of reading it, I realized I don't think I've ever read this story, to be perfectly honest. But today we read that. Tomorrow or next time we'll be reading 101 to 12. 101 to 12, he says, looking at his hands and goes wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. No, 101 to 120. This should be the last time we have to move the pages for this book, so that's good. Hold on, I put this in the wrong thing. There, that looks a lot better. So, yeah, that's the reading for that today. And now we need to go to Reading Corner of the Day, doing it up Stonsey's way. But today we are actually doing something very special. Well, not very special as in the sense of, ooh, this is so cool. Very special as in we're moving on to the next group of dogs. Today we are going to be talking about the Akita. But first, we're going to be talking about the working group. The next patch of dogs that we're going to be talking about, from the Akita all the way to the Tibetan Mastiff, which is a total of, let's see, 48 pages, which equals up to 24 different dog breeds, will be inside of the working group. And now I'm going to read you this little excerpt about the working group. For the working group, the working dogs are those that put their bravery or brawn into the service of humans. They can be broadly divided into guarding or protecting breeds, sledding breeds, carting breeds, and rescue breeds. In general, the working breeds are known for their intelligence and hardiness. And as such, we need to start the working group. The first one of them all is, of course, the Akita. Now, this dog looks a lot like a Shiba Inu mixed with a Mastiff, to be honest. It's just a weird-looking face with a cute little body. Kind of reminds me of me when I was younger. Now, before I can make fun of anything or have a strong opinion on something, I should learn of its history. Not only does it build my credibility in case I get into an argument or something around those lines, but also it makes me look smarter in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, or my 1984 R2-D2 Mickey Mouse hat that I got from Disney World from my sister, because that's when she went to graduation. Or some year. I don't really know the year, to be perfectly honest with you, but it still makes me look incredibly smart. So, the history of the Akita is that the Akita is perhaps the most renowned and venerated of the native Japanese breeds. Although it bears the likeness of dogs from the ancient Japanese tombs, the modern Akita is the result of concerted 19th century effort to restore 7 native Japanese dogs. The breeds, the Akita, larger than these breeds, was restored using many breeds of mixed breeds used for fighting. Indigenous Odate dogs were also used as best representatives of native Japanese animals. Over time, Japanese breeders selected against many traits descending from the fighting ancestors, including black mask, pinto pattern, and substantial size, whereas American breeders have perpetuated those traits. In 1918, the Akita Inu Zenkai Society of Japan was formed to preserve the original Akita, and in 1931, the Akita was designated one of Japan's natural monuments. And the most honored Akita of all time was Hachiko, who greeted his master every evening at the train station and accompanied him home. When his master died at work one day, Akito waited for him and continued to return and wait for his master every day until he died 9 years later on March 8, 1935. Today, a statue of the annual ceremony pays homage to Akito's loyalty. The first Akita arrived in America in 1937 when Helen Keller returned from Japan with one. Following World War II, servicemen returned home with Akitas from Japan. The breed's popularity grew slowly until it received AKC, American Kennel Company, recognition in 1972. Since then, it's steadily gained admirers and continues to grow in popularity. The Akita is now used as a guard and police dog in Japan. Wow, it has a lot of Japanese heritage in it. So, what if I want to own something of such important Japanese history? What's the temperament? Is it good with kids? Is it as loyal as the statue is proclaimed? Well, the temperament of the Akita is that as benefiting as the Spitz-like heritage, the Akita is bold, independent, stubborn, and tenacious. The demonstrative to his family, it is utterly devoted and protects family members. It is reserved with strangers, and it can be aggressive towards other dogs. It's domineering, though not a breed for everyone. In the right hands of the Akita is an excellent companion. So maybe not so good with kids, but if you are a person who's single and just wanting a dog, maybe it's good for you. What's the upkeep? How do I keep my strong, independent doggy with me at all times? Well, the upkeep of the Akita appreciates mental and physical exercise every day. It needs a chance to run in a safe area on a leash for a long jog. Given ample exercise and training, it can be quiet and well-mannered house dog. The Akita is able to live outdoors in temperate or cool climates, but is happiest when it spends most of its time with its family. The coat needs brushing about once a week to remove dead hair. Much more often than shedding, they tend to be somewhat messy drinkers. Wow, a messy drinker in the house. Like we don't have enough of those. I don't know if that joke landed with you or don't. I hope it didn't. Now, for any children, please cover your ears. For any adults or teenagers, please listen if you own an Akita, for we're going to be talking about the health concerns, the major, the minor health concerns, what they're occasionally seen with, their suggested tests, and their lifespan. Now, the major concerns are CHD and PRA. Minor concerns are elbow-dysplasia, pemphigus, sebaceous enditis, gastric torsion, cruciate ligament rupture, osteosarcoma, lymphosarcoma, and hypothyroidism. They're occasionally seen with PRA, patellar luxation, VKH-like syndrome, entropin, epilepsy, cataract, polyneuropathy, retinal corneal hypoplasia, and microphthalmia. I think that's how it says. Ophthalmia. They're suggested tests when you take them to the doctor are hip, elbow, eye, and thyroid. Lifespan is 10 to 12 years. And should be notes that onions have been documented to cause changes in red blood cells of Akitas. So Akitas don't like onions. Good to know. Now, what's the form and function of them? Imagine you don't see that picture in front of you. What can it do and what does it do? Well, the form and function of the Akita, as you may know from its history, is that it's a large and powerful breed with much substance and heavy bone. It is slightly longer than tall. The Akita's build reflects its original job of hunting game through deep snow and rugged terrain. Its double coat consists of a dense undercoat and straight, harsh outer coat, standing off on the body about 2 inches or less in length. Such a combination provides ample insulation from water and weather. The gait is brisk and powerful. The Akita is a versatile dog with a large Spitz type, able to perform as hunting companion and protector. Now, for the tier list of the section and the first tier list of the first working group, let me explain it to you. Let me rig it down. 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is the worst, 1 is the worst unless it comes to grooming. Now, the energy level, exercise requirements, playfulness, and affection level are all at a 3. Friendliness towards dogs is at a 1. Ugh, does not like other dogs. Friendliness towards other pets is at a 2. Not very kind with other pets. Friendliness towards strangers is at a 1. So, keep an eye on that. Ease of training is at a 3. So, pretty average. Watchdog abilities at a 5. So, very good at watching and keeping an eye on things. Protection abilities at a 4. So, they're pretty good at protecting too. Grooming requirements is at a 2, which is higher than average. But, whatever. Cold tolerance is at a 5, which is amazing. But heat tolerance is at a 1, which is not. The weight of a healthy male Akita should be 85 to 115 pounds. Female Akita should be 65 to 90 pounds. The height of a male Akita should be 25 to 28 pounds. And a female Akita is 23 to 26. I'm sorry if you hear clicking on my side. Someone is walking through my wooden floor. Or I guess it's a little linoleum. What are you doing in here, Pipes? How'd you get through the door? Oh, you're going to go on my bed? Alright, good night. Sorry, that's my basset hound. He heard me talk about other dogs. He got jealous. Well, speaking of, the next dog we're going to be talking about looks, again, a lot like a husky. I think it's going to be a returning trend. And that is the one you'll learn about in the next episode. So, hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. People like, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you guys didn't mind that this episode is longer than most. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I've been taking breaks in between, to be honest with you. Editing me is going to have a easy day. And yeah, super fantastic, wonderful day. I'm sorry. And I'll see you guys next time.